fellow NGOs and viewers. Welcome to the maiden edition of NGO Corner. Please subscribe. Today, I am sharing with you a step-by-step guide on how to set up a credible NGO in Nigeria. We are going to be very brief and we're going to be as quick as possible. I am sharing content from my book on how to set up an NGO. This information is for those that have an NGO already. It can strengthen their NGO, and those that don't have an NGO, they can get information to know how to set up a credible NGO. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Josephine Ogazi Egwonwu. By the grace of God, I'm the ED, Executive Director of Widows and Orphans Empowerment Organization, WIWI, and the Chief Executive Officer of Management Solutions for Africa, MS4A. So quickly, we're going straight to the matter, and we're going to discuss the first step of setting up a credible NGO in Nigeria. Thank you. So what is the first step? The first step in setting up a credible NGO in Nigeria is selecting the right name for your NGO. The Bible has said in Proverbs 22:1, it says, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches." So choosing a name for your NGO is very important. The name of your NGO should be thought, you should think through it very well. People just, pick any name and really juggle alphabets and, let me pick their grandchildren's name, their mother's name. No, you need to think through very well as to the core ideologies, the values, the purpose of your NGO that you want to set up, or you have set up to come up with a name. So after setting up a name, what else should we consider? There are two factors in setting up a name. What is the purpose of your NGO? You look at that, you think about, why am I setting up this NGO? I'm setting up this NGO to help vulnerable women, to help children, elderly, or for health, or for agriculture, or for education. So depending on what purpose you want to set up the NGO for, that will guide you in choosing a name. Also, a name is also what guides, the second factor that guides choosing a name is the geographical coverage, the location, the spread of the operations of the NGO. Some people are going to have a national coverage, a state coverage, local government coverage, or community coverage. So that can determine you calling your name Baseman International, Baseman National NGO. So these are the things that govern or guide selecting the name. Purpose of the organization of the NGO and geographical coverage. When selecting a name for your NGO, you need to think carefully, think through what is the reason for setting up the NGO. But these are 3 tips that you can quickly use to help you selecting the name. And the first tip is that look for a name that is neutral. Don't go for a name that is too specific. For instance, if you call your NGO HIV/AIDS NGO, that means that you're only focused on HIV/AIDS. You cannot do any other thing. That is what the impression people will have. That is, you're only doing work on HIV. So it's good to have a neutral name like Development Initiative. Development Initiative is a name that is broad. You can do anything. You can do HIV/AIDS development, you can do health development, education development, agricultural development. So it doesn't limit you or restrict you in future if you want to diversify. Another thing, let your name be in line with your core ideologies. What is your heart? What is your passion? some people that I speak to, they say, oh, I want to help the elderly. The elderly are suffering in this country. Nobody cares for them. So your NGO name could be around development care for the elderly and so on. Then another tip is when you are an NGO and you're considering what are the stakeholders that you want to work with, you want to engage, the donors, the partners. You can also consider that. So if you want to work in the area of governance, your NGO can be in the area of good governance. So the other thing to consider when you are selecting an NGO is that things to do in selecting a name. The first thing you need, practical thing you need to do, is you need to think about three names. And then you need to write down those names. Then you need to go to CAC, Corporate Affairs Commission, at the state level or at in Abuja to check the availability of those three names. And if any of the names are available, then you reserve those names. So CAC has a website, and you can go to that website, and then you can reserve your name on the website. I've tried it, and I didn't have so much success. Maybe because I'm not a technology savvy mama, but some people may have tried it, and if it doesn't work, you can actually write to CAC for the availability of the name. And another issue that I'd like to discuss is common mistakes people make while selecting a name for the NGO. One of the common mistakes are using the word foundation in their name. Using the word foundation in your name wrongly. Individuals like to register their NGO as foundation. Many people I speak to, they always have already, called their NGO foundation. Or when I ask them, what's the NGO name? Something foundation. I say, why foundation? If you use it wrongly, it is an error. This is because foundation means an organization established from the donated funds, an endowment, for the purpose of donating funds. So an NGO, a foundation, doesn't implement. It just it's a pool of resources to be given out. So if you, that's why you have some people like a Dangote Foundation. Dangote doesn't implement development projects. Aliko Dangote Foundation doesn't implement development projects. T.Y. Danjuma, Ford Foundation, Rose of Sharon, MTN Foundation, they don't implement, they give out grants to NGOs to implement. So if your NGO is called a foundation, that means then it's not going to receive resources, it's going to give out. So if you want to receive resources, then if your NGO name is foundation, then it's wrongly used. So if you have already made that, if your NGO is already registered as foundation, that's fine. But just for those who haven't gone ahead to register, let them avoid the use of the word foundation. Unless you want to be an NGO who doesn't look for funds and you just want to receive funding. Now, the use of the word foundation, it doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it gives if that's the name of your NGO, it gives an impression that you don't need funding, that you are going to self-funded, have funds. So that's that. So another mistake is using a technical name. If you include words in your NGO name like malaria, AIDS, tuberculosis, medicine, procurement, it gives a perception that an NGO activities are restricted to that AIDS, malaria, like I said in the beginning, HIV/AIDS, HIV project. So such names send the wrong information to a would-be donor. For example, health initiative. This may limit you from accessing governance funding because your name is health. So what are you doing with governance? So it's better to, as much as possible, try to choose a neutral name. Another mistake that a lot of I've seen a lot of NGOs make is using the word network in their name. One day I received a phone call from a lady that wanted some help for an NGO. I asked for her NGO name and she said it's something something network. I asked her, so your network, wow, how many members do you have? And she now said, no. The meaning of network is that it represents a group of different NGOs registered under an umbrella name. Therefore, using the word network as a word in an NGO is wrongly used, because when they hear the word network, that means that you have many members, and she didn't have any members, so she used the name wrongly. So don't use the word network. Once you have selected a name, then the next stage is for you to submit that name to CAC and select one of the names. Then you start your registration process. So we've come to the end of today's sharing. I hope you got some tips and information about how to select a name. We are going to take the next step 2, which is selecting trustees and board of directors. Very interesting. We're going to talk about how what is the role of trustees and how to select trustees. It's a very big issue, and many NGOs come to me and say, Madam, how do I choose good trustees? What is their role? You know, and the conflict of interest issues with family members being trustees, and all these issues will be discussed at our next session. So I hope you have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so we can all be together at the next episode of NGO Corner to discuss selecting trustees and board of directors for NGO. I hope you enjoyed my maiden edition of NGO Corner. Please, this is my first time. Please excuse my shortcomings, and together the purpose of this NGO Corner is to contribute to strengthening the organizational capacity of local NGOs, to prepare you and get you ready for the resources that God is bringing to local partners very soon. So if you have any, subscribe, and if you have any comments, comment on my page, and I can respond to your comments and ask you questions on assessment of your NGO. No question is not a correct question. Please ask any question. I am open to sharing with you all my experience, and thank you for watching. Bye bye. Subscribe and comment. Subscribe and comment. Thank you.